This video will explain how to approach question 3 in the Unit 1 English Language GCSE paper for AQA. Question 3 will always ask you to explain thoughts and feelings within a text, and to get top marks for this question you need to show that you can engage in detail with the text, you can offer perceptive, that means that you can make intelligent points about what you've read, and you can interpret thoughts and feelings and show that you can do this by using quotations to back up what you say and to help you explain your interpretations. Today we are going to look at a past paper from the November 2012 GCSE English paper. To start with, for question 3 you always need to have a look at source 3. So to start with, the best thing to do is to have a look at the front of the insert paper, which explains where each source comes from. So in this case we're going to have a look at where it says source 3 here, and it says Wartime Homes, an extract from a non-fiction book by Michael Caine. Straight away you can probably deduce that this is some kind of autobiographical extract, and in this case it's written by Michael Caine, so those of you that are perceptive will know that he is a famous actor from films and will probably know who he is. It's always important to have a look at the description of the sources because this helps you to know what you're talking about when you're writing about the text, and also it helps you to understand the purpose of the text and who the intended audience are and that kind of thing. So make sure you do spend a few minutes having a look at the description of the 3 sources on the front of the insert paper. The next thing you need to do is have a look at the bit that's usually in italics underneath the title, which is what a lot of students sometimes forget to do. So have a look at this bit in particular. So I'm just going to quickly read it. During the Second World War, Michael Caine and his brother Stanley, like other children, were moved out of London to live with families in safer parts of the country. This part in italics just puts what you're about to read into context and helps you to understand what you're about to read. Before you read the extract, have a good read of the question. So when you turn over your question paper to question 3, what you'll see first of all is that there are 1, 2, 3 pages, which gives you some clue as to how much to write for your answer. Okay. Secondly, have a look at how many marks it's worth. You should have revised this already, but it's worth 8 marks. Right, so that suggests that you should be spending about 15 to 17 minutes on this question, including the reading time. Secondly, you need to really make sure that you've read the question properly. So in this case it says, read source 3, Wartime Homes, which is an extract from a non-fiction book by Michael Caine. Explain some of the thoughts and feelings Michael Caine has about the places where he lived during the war. So it's not just any old thoughts and feelings, it's the thoughts and feelings he had about the places that he lived in during the war. So we have to try and read this text quite quickly. You can use skim and scanning techniques, and you need to look for key words that the question are asking. So we're looking for anything to do with thoughts and feelings. We've got to be careful not to fall into the trap of thinking the topic is Michael Caine. It's actually his thoughts and feelings about the places where he lived, what he thought about them then and how he feels about them now. So that's what we need to keep in mind as we're reading the text. The question is really testing our skills of being able to infer. In other words, we find information from the text and then we show our understandings by linking sections of the text and drawing conclusions, exploring significance of words and phrases through their symbolism and connotations, and then making sure that you can empathise with what Michael Caine is writing about. That means putting yourself in his shoes and then explaining why he might have felt that way. That's really going to show that you've engaged with the text and get you those top band marks. Really, you could say that this text is separated into 2 sections. The first section here kind of describes a place that was described as quite a cruel place, whereas the second section here is much more positive, and he describes it using words like paradise. So that again shows you the different thoughts he has for the 2 places. Remember, to get a grade C, you've got to find a range of relevant quotations to support your answer. when it comes to writing, you need to use your own words and quotations and explore the connotations and symbolisms and suggestions that the writer's made through the words that he's chosen. For example, you might want to choose this quote here: "I was taken in by a couple who were just plain cruel." This suggests that they treated him badly and did not care for him. It might seem like you're stating the obvious, but actually this is showing that you're engaging with the text and that you're able to infer what was going on. To get the top marks, you need to try and link your quotes together. So you might look further down the text here where it says that even worse, they used to go away for the weekend and leave me locked in the cupboard. So I'd continue to explain that this lack of care is really shown through this quote too. And it symbolises how trapped and scared he must have felt, because it's a small and scary place for a child to be locked in. Now we're going to show our understanding of the whole text by moving on to the second part of the writing. Michael Caine contrasts his first experience in a town with a different experience of being in the country. So now we're going to try and find quotes that are much more positive to contrast with the first part of the text where we've looked at all the negative thoughts and feelings. So for example, I might pick out this quote: "It was the best thing that ever happened to me." Or I might look at where it says that everything was organic, which suggests that it was a lovely place to be. Finally, he says he appreciated the country because I went there, and I appreciated London because I'd left it behind. Remember, to get the top marks you need to be quite perceptive and to show that you've really engaged with the text. So to do that, you might want to pick out a quote like, for example, where he says that Norfolk was like paradise here. And then you might want to think of a synonym for the word paradise to show you've really understood it. So you could explain it by saying something like, by describing the place as paradise, he's using a word which has connotations of heaven. Okay, so that's showing really positive feelings about being in Norfolk. It sounds like just the most perfect place to be, and he also describes it as the best thing, which emphasises the fact that this was the most important event in his life. At this point, really perceptive students might start talking about the contrast between the start of the text and the end of the text. Actually, it probably wasn't the best place to be in the whole world, but it seems like the best place to him just because of the contrast between the two places that he's been to. This is an example paragraph from a student's answer to this question. There are two reasons why this is a good answer. The first one is that it shows that it's able to refer closely to the text, and not just part of the text but the whole text, which shows a clear engagement and understanding with the text as a whole, which is what you really want to aim to do to impress the examiner. The second thing it does is it makes quite perceptive comments, which is what the top band asks for in order to get 7 or 8 marks. So I'll explain both those points now. Okay, first of all, this response is using quotes from the beginning of the text, and it's showing that we understand that Michael Caine had feelings of negativity at the start. He describes his experience as being so traumatic. And then it also talks about a contrast between the beginning and the end. So it later on it describes Norfolk was a paradise, and this shows Caine's range of emotions, not just one emotion. It talks about how his emotions change from the start to the end of the text, which is really good. Secondly, the answer is perceptive because it shows like that the words have been understood and that the student has interpreted them in their own mind. And one way to do this quite cleverly is to try and use a synonym. That just means another word for the same thing. So here where we've got the quote paradise, the students explain this by saying that it suggests feelings of euphoria. If you come across a word like paradise, then it's always a good idea to try and link it to religion in some way. Obviously, paradise has connotations of the Garden of Eden. It's quite symbolic in that way. Anything to do with paradise suggests like heightened feelings of happiness, and if you can compare this to the very traumatic feelings felt at the start, then you've got a real range of feelings, and obviously the more that you can explain about this, then the higher marks you'll get, because it's showing that you're perceptive, it's showing that you're fully engaged with the text, and that's exactly what you want to do to impress the examiner. Obviously, to get the full marks, you need to aim to write at least 5 paragraphs. You are aiming to try and fill the 3 pages that are given to you. Obviously you've got to keep your eye on the time and write as much as you can in that time, but the more detail the better, because it just shows that you've clearly engaged with the text and that you're very perceptive, which is what you're aiming to be. Okay.